Welcome to the MFA podcast, where you'll learn what they don't teach in art school. Here, you'll get your real life MFA, where M stands for mindset, money, manifestation, and of course, me, your host, Marina Granger, founder of the Artist Advisory, the first of its kind where we take an integrated approach to your career as an artist. With nearly 2 decades of experience working in the art world, I blend practical business guidance with powerful mindset and manifestation tools to help you build the life and legacy you have always dreamed of. Tune in and get the guidance you deserve. Hello, artists. I'm your host, Marina Granger. Welcome back to the MFA podcast. If you are tuning in on Apple Podcasts or just by audio only, know that you can watch this on YouTube. I'm literally recording a video right now as well. And I think it's just fun to do. I just really wanted this background. I put up this wallpaper myself. I'm really proud of myself. I did it. I just want to show you my vibe. Anyway, so today I want to talk to you about one of the most magical things that we can do, and that is planning your business as an artist, right? Oh my gosh, business can sound so boring, but it's also really empowering because if you think of yourself as an entrepreneur, you suddenly have all of this power. A lot of the time you might be waiting around thinking like, okay, as an artist, I have to wait to be invited to, do a show or whatever, to somehow magically manifest a gallerist like knocking on my window and saying, hey, is this your studio? No. Okay. You don't have to just kind of sit around and wait for things to happen. You can make them happen yourself. Now, a lot of the artists that work with me, they know that I love to do this. I love to have you think of your business, of your studio as a business, right? And when you have a business, you set goals every quarter. And right now we're going into Q2, right? The second quarter of the year. It's also a really magical day. If you're watching this, listening to this on or around April 17th, it is the new moon in Aries. And if you're into astrology, you know that this is like one wild new moon because we have 7 or more, I think, planets in Aries today and for the past few days in the 12th house, which rules the subconscious mind. It rules how we create our identity, how we think about ourselves, because, in a nutshell, and I've talked about this on previous episodes, the way that we make every single decision in our life and what we have in our life is not what you want, but it's who you are. It stems from your idea of who you are, your identity. You are the kind of person that does sell your paintings for X amount, right? You are the kind of person that galleries reach out to. And yes, you're the kind of person that does walk into the Chanel store if you want to, right? So here's the thing, because you might be thinking, okay, well, how does this work? From your identity, you have a certain set of belief systems, right? Like a certain set of beliefs. I am the kind of person that does this and that, right? And from those beliefs, you have decisions and feelings that come up that you are taking action on. And from that action, you get the result of who you are. So I invite you this new moon in Aries to start thinking of yourself as a powerful business owner. You are a business owner, you are an artist, and today I want to share with you how I work with my clients to create their business so that it's amazing. And they're not only relying on galleries. As a matter of fact, I have an artist that I've worked with for ages, and she now works with 2 galleries. She wanted to sell some work from her studio that was like earlier work that was just sitting around, and the galleries were not going to be showing. And so she ended up doing direct sales out of her studio, but she made sure it was okay with her galleries. It's so important that you have a harmonious relationship with your gallery. So she was able to do both. She literally just told them exactly what she wanted to do and they okayed it. And so she did it. So there she has two pillars of her business. The first pillar is working with galleries. The next is direct sales from the studio. And you might want to focus on different pillars throughout your career as an artist. But I invite you today to set at least three pillars to your business. I like to think of them as the legs on a table. You could have one, you could have two, but the more you have, the steadier the table is and the steadier the business is, right? So today I want to invite you to think of your studio as a business and to have three pillars or more to your business that you will focus on in the next quarter until, for the next 3 months. And if you're listening to this episode and it is, it's in like June or something, and you're like, okay, I got to wait till July now because that's how quarters work. No, just do it now. You can have your own quarter. You could have a half quarter. Just do it. Just start it. Okay. So here's the thing. What are the three pillars of your business? What could they be? So we already know galleries could be one. So whatever you want to do towards working with galleries could be one pillar of your business. Another pillar could be direct sales from the studio. Another pillar could be marketing, right? So growing on social media, growing your mailing list could be a part of that. Another pillar could be public relations. So getting press for your business, for yourself as an artist. And so another one could be education. Perhaps you also mentor other artists or you teach or you do workshops of some sort. So that could be another pillar of your business. And I don't want to overwhelm you by saying like, hey, you have to have more and more pillars. Let's start. If you haven't had pillars to your business before, if you haven't thought of it this way, let's start with just three. And one of those pillars could easily be developing a new series because that's possibly what you're doing, right? So think about the three pillars of your business. What could they be, right? I'm going to give you an example of what you might do for every single pillar that I've mentioned so far. So for galleries, one thing that you can do in the next quarter is you can work on your website. I know you're thinking like, huh, what? But working on your website is so important because the more organized you are on your website, the more likely a gallery is to respond to you or to notice you, go to like the next level. Because once a gallery notices you, they're going to look on your website before they even ask for a studio visit. This is so important because they want to get an idea of the type of artist you are, what it's like to work with you. So when I was working in galleries, and you may know this, but I've worked in galleries from 2004 to 2017 in New York City. I was a gallery director for 7 years, and I hated to see artists get the runaround, which is why I do what I do. I created the Artist Advisory in 2018 because I thought that it was time for artists to feel empowered. This was super special to me because some of the people that were not so great in the art world. There's so many great ones too, but there's some that are not so great. Not only treated artists like crap, but also me. So I was like, you know what? No more. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to take it. Okay. So here we are. So if you're working on the pillar of working with galleries, a gallery will look on your website first, right, to see the development of your work. So you want to have your recent work. I love to tell you guys to have a grid of your work by series or by date so that a gallerist can look at everything kind of all in one, or curator. And We could see the orientation of the work if it's two-dimensional, whether it's vertical or horizontal, the size, the date, the medium, the titles. It gives us a really great overview. And the next thing that I would do is work on your about page, because on your about page, this is where you kind of introduce yourself in a nutshell. So somebody might be drawn to your work, somebody from a gallery or curator, but it's going to be difficult for them to say, like, hey, this artist is really great, like, come see him with me. That's a really hard sell. But if they say, hey, this artist is so cool, they were in medical school, and then at the very end they decided to drop out because they were so into human anatomy that they started to paint the human figure. You've got to see this work, right? That is a little bit more compelling than just this artist is cool. So it also gives the gallery a story with which it's easier to create a pitch for their collectors, that they can tell their collectors about the work. And that is essentially an elevator pitch. It is something that if you go back into previous episodes of this podcast, I've talked about a lot. It's also something that has been quoted in books like Christy Gordon's How to Be a Great Artist. She quoted me on this formula, the elevator pitch formula. It's what you're interested or why you do what you do, how your perspective informs your work, and then what you do. A lot of artists start off by saying, well, yeah, I'm an abstract painter. Guess what? If they hear that you're an abstract painter, they're gonna think of the last abstract painter that they saw, and it's just gonna get lost. So here's the thing. Always look at your website before you start working with galleries. There's so many more things that I could tell you, or not necessarily before you start working with galleries, but before you start really actively seeking out galleries. You want to feel organized. You want to give them a good overview of your work, and it's how you curate your portfolio on there as well that makes a huge difference. And having that about page with 2 paragraphs, one that has your elevator pitch about your work, and then the second paragraph about your recent accomplishments, kind of the highlights of your CV, or even if you don't have a CV yet, the highlights of your career. It could be super simple, but it could be anything from so and so lives and works in this place, and they are a self taught artist and have their work in collections in X, Y, and Z. And those collections could be your mom's house, and that's okay. All right. So the next thing is focusing on, let's say you're going to do direct sales from the studio, right? Direct sales. What you want to do is you want to create a mailing list. So if you don't have a mailing list yet, the next pillar to work on would be the marketing pillar, where you create your mailing list. But if you already have a mailing list, then you can go into direct sales right away. And one thing that you can do is you can start to think of a launch, right? So important to give people an example, an excuse to buy your work, not an example, an excuse. Because when there are exhibitions and galleries, what they do is they give people an excuse to buy the work. So why not create your sort of exhibition, except it's a virtual launch of a collection of your work? It doesn't have to be new work. One of the artists that I work with, she was like, okay, I mean, my studio's open, I've got collectors, but no one's buying right now. So what she did was she created a special curated collection of her most favorite work. I mean, I know this sounds so generic, but it worked because she said that it was her favorite work. It's a curated collection. She only had like 9 items for sale, one of which I always advise for you to always upload something that's already been sold, so that when people open it up, they see, oh, somebody bought something, and it like makes them feel better about buying something. It makes them feel more comfortable. So what she did was she created this page on her website with 9 available paintings, one of which is sold. So 8 available paintings, one sold. And she started to plan out a launch. 2 weeks ahead of the drop, she started to send out a couple of emails. So it's one email per week and then two emails right before, one the day before, one 2 days before, about the collection drop, telling people about the collection. And then she opened it up. On the first day, people opened up the email. They don't necessarily recognize older work. So you can have older work. Nobody knows your work as much as you do. So you can have older work in that collection drop. And she just offered free shipping and handling within the uh, country where she was. And she sold a painting right away, a $3,000 painting. Boom, directly. And the person who bought it sent her a note that underlines why you want to do something like this. The person who bought it said, "Hey, I always wanted one of your paintings, but I wasn't sure which one. And I'm so glad you did this because I saw the one that I needed and I got it right away." So this is someone who was looking at the artist's work, thinking about buying, not buying, and finally bought, right? So boom, that's direct sales. So if you're going to work on that pillar, think about creating this launch sequence. And something, if you've worked with me in the Artist Academy before, it's one of the bonuses in the Artist Academy is a course called How to Build and Maintain Your Mailing List. And it also has not only how to build that mailing list, but also how to create that launch sequence. And so it's been really great. Pretty much every single artist who's done this seriously has sold at least one painting, and not for pennies, for like more. So this is really good. So the next thing is marketing, right? If you don't have a mailing list yet, what can you do to get people on there? And so one of the things that you can do, let's say you have a very small social media following or a very large one, it's going to be a little bit different for each. So if you have a small social media following, what you can do, and I know this sounds a little tedious, but it works. And only when it's small, because that's manageable. Every time you get a new follower, get this. This has worked for the artists that I work with. Every time you get a new follower, send them a DM saying, "Hey, I'm so delighted to connect with you on socials. I just want to make sure that we stay connected. Would it be okay, or how would you feel if I added you to my mailing list?" You can always unsubscribe if you want to say that, but you don't have to. And you can draft this little thing like, "I'm so excited to be connected and I would love to stay connected. Would you like to, can I add you to my mailing list? What's your email?" Right? Just something like that. Put it in your notes app on your phone so that you can copy and paste it every time you get a follower. If you have a large following, you can, of course, automate something like this with ManyChat, which is really great. But another thing that you can do is you can create a reason for people to sign up to your mailing list. So even if you don't want to give a discount, which I don't advise everybody to do, for 10% off, you get on my email list, you get 10% off. That's kind of boring, right? And it's like a high conversion, and it has to be from someone who really wants your work right then and there. So it's a little bit intense. Okay. So meaning it's from a very warm lead, would you get something like that? That's what I mean by high conversion. It would be a high converting person who gets on, which is great, but it's a little bit more difficult. So what I would do is I would say something like, "Hey, I see that we're connected on socials. I would love to stay in touch and put you in my VIP collectors club." And you give them some sort of extra bonus for being in a VIP collectors club, whether it's a behind the scenes mini video, or of your studio, or maybe it's just a sequence of emails that are about your process, about your work, about your elevator pitch. Because remember, how your perspective informs your work is really, really huge. It's so important for people to know. Okay, because then they think you're the expert, right? Because only you have that perspective. I know, it's genius. Okay, so next, let's do one more. So we have galleries, direct sales, marketing, and the last one we'll do today is going to be something I call internal operations. So every business has internal operations, and what you would do with internal operations is anything from creating a new series to organizing your studio to even creating a catalog for your work, which is really great to have because if you've sold work before, you can use this as a tool to sell more work. Now, get this, imagine you have this, okay? So you can have a little catalog like this. This is Arlene Mans, and she was our previous guest on this podcast. And so what you can do is you can have print on demand books like this from Blurb, and you can use them to sell more work. So the way that I tell you to do this is first you want to get a writer to write about your work. This is a forward in Arlene's book, and it is by the curator of exhibitions from the museum where she recently had her show. Now, you can offer a small honorarium to someone to write the intro. So you have like outside validation, so to speak, right? Or if you don't feel like it, you could also just have a first person like mini statement in here. Then the next thing you want to do, and here's an example, I think from Gail's book, Gail over here, is you have a section called paintings. You can also be a little bit more forward and say available painting. And so then you have just painting, a page like this, kind of like that. And then you can have a section that says recently sold or recently acquired. So then over here, you have the sold paintings. You have it's a private collection, which is really great. And then you can send it to anyone who bought a painting of yours that's in the book and say, hey, I put your painting in the book. And they get to see other paintings that are available, maybe newer ones they haven't seen before. And it's a great way to get them to buy it because it's a soft sell, but it's exciting because they get to see it in a book and then they say, hey, I have 2 paintings in this book, right? It's really great. So anyway, those are the few things you can do for the pillars in your business. I invite you to have a moment to think about the pillars in your business, write down exactly what those pillars are, and 1 or 2 or more things that you can do in the next 3 months to grow each of those pillars. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Feel welcome to share this with a friend or anyone who you feel would benefit from this episode. Remember, a rising tide raises all ships, and this podcast